This video is sponsored by NordVPN. It's a service that'll help protect you while you're on the web. And right now, they're offering a great deal. It's 75% off a 3-year plan. That comes to $2.99 per month. Just go to nordvpn.com/companyman to get it. Plus, use the code COMPANYMAN to get an extra month for free. It's in the description. Bananas. On the surface, it seems like such a simple business. Grow some bananas, get them over to the store, sell them for less than $1 a pound. And bananas are pretty good. You can make some banana bread from them, put them in a smoothie, banana splits. They're even convenient to eat on their own. Just don't slip on one of their peels. I've seen that time and time again in cartoons, and it never ends well. But like most things in life, the deeper you look into it, the more complicated it becomes. One of the biggest banana companies throughout history, and still today, is Chiquita. I'd say most of us are familiar with them. To avoid confusion, the company's been called United Fruit through most of its existence, but I'll be calling it Chiquita. That's how we all know them, and it's 10 times more fun to say. Without going too far into it, I'd say that no one has done more for bananas than Chiquita. They started in the late 1800s, before bananas were a common thing in most of the world, and they helped make bananas a common thing in most of the world. Early on, they were responsible for most of the bananas sold in the United States and Europe. Just to give you an idea of how small the industry was and how dominant Chiquita was in that industry, in their second year of existence, there were only 20 million bananas sold in the US and Europe combined, and 15 million of those were provided by Chiquita. They were one of the first companies to use pesticides. They were the first to ship refrigerated cargo at the turn of the century, and for many years after, Chiquita dominated the banana market. Now, throughout the years, others joined the market and they became less and less dominant, but in 1944, they came out with Miss Chiquita and her catchy banana song.
I'm Chiquita Banana and I understand.
It put that name in the public's head, whether they wanted it or not, and it made them associate it with bananas. It was all great for the company and became such a big part of it. I thought this was cool. I was looking through their annual reports, and for the one from 1997, this was one of their introductory pages. So if you want the sheet music to it, there you go. And then in 1963, they started putting those blue stickers on their bananas. It's a genius way of taking what's a commodity and branding it as your own. There's a quick overview of the rise of Chiquita. They started in the industry early on, helped make it what it is, responsible for many firsts, a catchy ad campaign, innovative branding. It all combines to make a successful banana company. But in the 1990s, things went bad. Here, let me prove it. A sales graph tends to be a good way to show it. Here's their sales from that time period. In this range, everything before 1992 looks just fantastic, but then you could see everything after that is not as good. Now, it's not a perfect downslope, but it is lower and definitely not growing anymore. And then at the end of this range, it just gets worse. That's a pretty good visual. I think their net income graph makes it look more severe. It's increasing every year up until 1991, and then turning negative for almost every year after that, and the few positives that they have are really nothing compared to the negatives. And then, what if I said, in 1991, when everything was looking good, their stock price was hanging around $50. 10 years later, it was down to 48 cents. Here's my final piece of evidence. In late 2001, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I think it's clear, these were bad times for Chiquita. Before I get into the reasoning for all of this, I have to say, this isn't the only time they've struggled. If you were to look back further, you'd find periods very similar to this. I know everything about them so far has seemed so happy and cheerful, catchy songs and cool stickers. That's definitely how they want to be portrayed.
People see the blue sticker and think Chiquita tastes better.
But this is one of the most controversial companies I've ever encountered. So all of this controversy can help explain all of these rises and falls. I might make a video talking about this end of things in a little more detail later on, but for now, let me give you a few highlights. Do you know the term Banana Republic? It's a derogatory term. The dictionary on Google defines it as a small nation, especially in Central America, dependent on one crop or the influx of foreign capital. The Cambridge Dictionary defines it as a small small country, especially in South and Central America, that is poor, corrupt, and badly ruled. Chiquita is associated with the origin of this term. And then in 1926, the Banana Massacre, this was a weird, tragic thing where basically a bunch of Chiquita workers went on strike in Colombia, and then the Colombian government came in and killed them all with machine guns. You might want to look further into that one, but that's the main idea. In 1975, another weird one, the leader of the company killed himself by jumping off the 44th floor of a building. And then a few weeks later, the SEC uncovered that the company had bribed a Honduran official $2.5 million in return for reducing their export taxes. They were also accused of bribing European officials. That one caused the stock to stop trading for almost a week, and you could see how that would hurt the stock price and the company in general, which it did. In 1996, a Chiquita executive was accused of being involved in a kidnapping attempt of an executive at a rival company. Everything was dropped on that one, but the investors were still understandably shaken by it. It's part of all this decline that I showed you earlier. More recently, in 2007, they admitted to paying terrorists for protection in a farming region in Colombia. Those are just some highlights. There's numerous accusations and rumors floating around. Historically, they've just been considered a shady company, and as a result, are seemingly always in an unstable condition. So that 1996 kidnapping incident, along with other things like that, very likely played a part in this decline, but if you were to ask the company about it, they would tell you it's because of the European banana quotas, and I would have to agree. Here, let me explain. Bananas grow the best in Central America, in the northern part of South America, that whole area, so that's where Chiquita grows their bananas. After World War II, there were all these quotas put in place across various European countries concerning bananas. For example, in Great Britain and France, they were very strict, meaning the government wouldn't allow them to accept many bananas from Central America. Now, in Germany, there really weren't any quotas, so they were free to accept them, and then the rest of the European countries would fall somewhere between. Well, in the early 90s, the European Union was coming together, and instead of all these different trade laws for each country, they were getting set to adopt some uniform laws. Chiquita took this as a good thing. They predicted that this would mean the quotas would essentially be lifted, and they'd be able to sell way more bananas over there. And of course, they wanted to be ready for all those sales and get a jump on the competition. In 1990, they spent $282 million on land and equipment. The next year, they spent $400 million on it. They were forced to take out a bunch of loans to fund all this expansion, but it was all going to be worth it once they were selling all these bananas in Europe. I think you can predict where this is going. The new trade laws were adopted, and they were stricter than ever. All of this hurt them from 3 different angles. For one, they used to have a 40% market share in the European banana market, and it was now cut in half. For 2, they now had all of this debt and no way to generate money to pay it back. And for 3, they desperately attempted to sell all of these extra bananas in the US, and that just made the supply too high and caused the prices to go down. I think it's safe to say that these new quotas introduced in 1993 are largely responsible for their struggles throughout the 90s. From there, they protested the quotas, along with the US government as well as the governments of many other American countries. The World Trade Organization ruled in favor of Chiquita in 1997, but the EU still refused to lift the quotas. In 2001, an agreement was finally reached, and they were lifted, but Chiquita was already impacted quite a bit. They estimated that they had lost $1.3 billion in sales from all of this. Their bankruptcy occurred in the same year. Basically, what happened in the bankruptcy is they owed all of these bondholders money, and the bondholders said that they would forgive $700 million in debt in return for 95% of the company's stock. So the owners, through all of these troubles, were then reduced to 5% ownership. But from there, things got better. Their quotas were lifted, their debt was more manageable. They even bought the brand Fresh Express in 2005. They make those bags of salad, but also some pre-packaged cut up fruit. That made for their highest sales year ever, and their income took a step in the right direction as well. The recovery was pretty strong for about 3 years, and then things took a turn after that. It had to do with new rules governing banana imports in the EU. In 2006, they started higher tariffs, meaning they were able to sell as many bananas in Europe as they wanted, but they would have to pay an extra fee to do it. Plus, remember that terrorism scandal that came to light in 2007? There's more that could be said about the most recent decade of this company, but I'm going to end it there, since we've already covered their rise and fall and rise again, as promised. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about all of this? Turns out the banana business isn't as simple as it seems. My intention of this video was to focus on their struggles throughout the 90s and the early 2000s and their recovery that followed. I provided some core reasons, but there's other things that you can point to here. Maybe pointing to these laws that were beyond their control was a bit of an excuse. It obviously affected them, and their gamble to invest in more bananas beforehand didn't help things. But maybe they would have benefited from focusing on other regions and other products instead of spending the next decade trying to fight these laws. Also, let me know if you want me to talk more about some of these scandals or share anything you have to say about them. I'd like to hear what you have to say. I want to talk about today's sponsor, NordVPN. This is what I use to protect myself while I'm on the internet because I wouldn't feel safe without it. I don't want to be researching a video and be worried about some criminal hackers learning my location and passwords. I mean, I have passwords for a reason, and these hackers are out there. I was reading this New York Times article about how these Chinese and Iranian hackers are attacking US companies. This is the kind of stuff that NordVPN protects against. They have thousands of servers in over 60 countries, and they're super fast. No data logging, military-grade encryption, up to 6 connections at once. This is the real deal. Right now, they have what I would call a pretty good offer. 75% off a 3-year plan. It's $2.99 a month, plus that extra month for free if you use the code COMPANYMAN. To take advantage of it, simply go to nordvpn.com/companyman. The link is in the description. Thank you for watching.